The Indiana Fever fans were chanting, "Sophie, Sophie."
It wasn't a buzzer beater. It wasn't a record-breaking stat line. It was a single, aggressive foul, one moment that changed everything. This is the story of Sophie Cunningham, whose now famous flagrant foul against Caitlin Clark did more than stop a play. It sparked national debate, lit up social media, and revealed deep divisions within the league. What some saw as excessive, others saw as a statement, one that challenged the WNBA's image and priorities. In just 48 hours, that foul turned Sophie from a name on the roster to the center of attention. Her actions not only shifted the spotlight, it mobilized fans, shook up conversations around fairness, and flipped the script on her career.
So they're going coast to coast. And here we got another.
The matchup between the Indiana Fever and the Connecticut Sun was already packed with tension. For weeks, fans had voiced their frustration as Caitlin Clark, whose presence alone has shattered viewership records, seemed to take hit after hit without much protection. But this game? It felt like the tipping point. Things escalated when JCS Sheldon delivered a sharp swipe that landed directly on Clark's face, igniting immediate outrage and signaling that something in the league dynamics had shifted.
Teams are going to have to think twice about messing with Caitlin Clark again.
The Connecticut Sun had clearly made a statement with their physical play, but what stood out even more was the response from the officials. Despite the intensity of the foul, the referees brushed it off with nothing more than a routine technical. For many watching, it was a shocking lack of urgency, especially when the player on the receiving end was one of the league's biggest draws. Then, just moments later, Marina Mabrey delivered a hard body check that sent Caitlin Clark crashing to the floor. It was the kind of contact that, in most leagues, would lead to an immediate ejection. But once again, the whistle stayed mostly silent, and the message grew louder.
Oh, like, whoa, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe people are doing this. Two Caitlin Clark teammates weren't jumping in there. They bring in Sophie Cunningham. I had no idea. Sophie Cunningham was a black belt at the age of 6.
Yeah.
Boom! Wow.
The game had shifted from competition to something more troubling, a public show of disrespect. And what stunned viewers most was the lack of response. No serious fouls called, no intervention, just silence. For fans watching at home, it was infuriating. There was a growing sense of helplessness, as if the league was standing by while its biggest rising star was being openly targeted. Caitlin Clark wasn't just playing, she was taking hits with little to no protection. To many, it felt like the WNBA was letting its most valuable player take the fall, and the outrage was building fast.
When they allow that stuff to happen, and it's been happening all season long. All season long. It's not just this game, it's been happening all season long. This is what happens, right? This is what happens. You've got competitive women who are the best in the world at what they do, right? And when you allow them to play physical and you allow these things to happen, they're going to compete. And they're going to have their teammates' backs.
But what started as a heated matchup quickly spiraled into something more disturbing, a blatant display of disrespect unfolding in real time. And what shocked fans the most wasn't just the physical play, it was the silence that followed. No serious penalties. No strong officiating. Just business as usual. Viewers at home were left stunned and frustrated. It felt like they were watching a star being singled out, with no one stepping in to protect her. Caitlin Clark, who had brought new eyes and energy to the league, was left to endure it all without support. To many, the message was clear and troubling. The WNBA's biggest draw was being left vulnerable, and fans were no longer willing to stay quiet about it.
Watch when Caitlin Clark is trying to create some space. It looked like she just got hit in the eye there.
Ooh, and Marina Mabrey. I missed that one, Idona.
This wasn't just a reactionary foul, it was a statement. Sophie Cunningham wasn't just responding to rough play, she was drawing a line in the sand. The message to the Connecticut Sun, and to every team in the WNBA, was crystal clear: the days of taking free shots at Caitlin Clark were over. It was the moment fans had been waiting for. After weeks of watching in frustration, someone finally stood up. Sophie didn't just play defense, she stepped into the role of protector, the teammate who had the courage to say, "That's enough." In a single, powerful moment, she answered the question that had echoed across the league: who's going to have Caitlin's back? The answer, as it turned out, was Sophie Cunningham.
This angle is wild, folks. There's the eye gouge. Watch Mabrey. Boom! I mean, come on.
It made me think if this was LeBron in the NBA, think if this was Steph Curry in the NBA, do you really think that the NBA would be allowing certain players in the NBA to go after LeBron the way that Caitlyn was chucked to the ground? Do you think if another player came up, blindsided LeBron, chucked him to the ground after he had just been poked in the eye, that the NBA would be like, oh yeah, technicals, nobody's ejected, just a common technical foul? That would never happen. It would never happen.
The reaction online was swift and sharply divided. Two very different camps emerged almost instantly. On one side, there was outrage. A wave of criticism crashed in, with some fans launching petitions calling for Sophie Cunningham to be removed from the league entirely. Social media lit up with harsh words, accusing her of being reckless and harmful to the game, with many demanding a suspension. But as the backlash grew louder, something else became clear. Beneath the outrage was a deep inconsistency, one that revealed a troubling double standard within the league and its fan base.
Even as good as that rating was, Caitlin Clark's good for about 1 million extra viewers.
What this moment really uncovered was something deeper and far more uncomfortable. The outrage wasn't just about a hard foul, it was about who that foul was meant to protect. Suddenly, the debate wasn't just about sportsmanship. It became a battle of perspectives, and the divide within the fanbase grew wider by the hour. Ironically, just a few months earlier in a preseason matchup, Sophie Cunningham was on the receiving end of a similar hit, slammed to the floor without much fanfare. Back then, many of the same voices now calling for her punishment were praising that play. They defended the contact, supported the aggressor, and even encouraged more of that physical style. The contrast laid bare an uncomfortable truth: the rules of outrage weren't being applied evenly.
And I mean, when I tell you social media is setting the WNBA on fire right now, not in a good way, that's the understatement.
Critics flooded the internet with angry posts and digital petitions. Sophie Cunningham chose a different kind of response, one that didn't involve words at all. She didn't issue a statement, didn't apologize, and didn't acknowledge the backlash. Instead, she let the moment speak for itself. With one simple retweet, she shared the news that her Indiana Fever jersey had completely sold out. No drama, no debate, just results. In a single move, Sophie flipped the narrative and turned the outrage into momentum. The petition? Instantly overshadowed by a wave of support.
All right, enough is enough. You know, at some point, the line gets crossed too often where something needs to be done and things need to be corrected.
Fans made their stance clear, not with hashtags, but with their wallets. And in doing so, they sent a message louder than any online petition. It was a checkmate moment. Sophie Cunningham had just pulled off a masterclass in modern media strategy. By staying silent and letting the numbers speak, she turned criticism into currency. What started as outrage became her personal marketing campaign, proving that the backing she received wasn't just passionate, it was profitable.
That's a flagrant foul.
It's tapping into one of the most powerful forces in modern sports, the Clark Army. Caitlin Clark's fan base is unlike anything the WNBA has seen. Massive, loyal, and deeply engaged, they're not just casual viewers, they're a movement. They show up, speak out, and rally behind anyone who supports their star. And when Sophie stood up for Caitlin, they took notice, and they responded.
I truly think that this was a message that she was sending to the leagues, to the officiating, just like to everybody, because it is, if you are watching any of these games, you are seeing that there is a disparity in the way that it's being officiated, and the Indiana Fever are held to a standard that no other team.
This wasn't the first time the Clark effect rewrote the rules. Just look at Kate Martin, a second-round draft pick from Iowa, who outsold the league's reigning MVP in jersey sales, simply because she shared the court with Caitlin Clark. Now picture the impact when a player doesn't just play alongside Clark, but steps up to defend her, physically and publicly, right when fans felt she needed it most. That's exactly what Sophie Cunningham did. In that moment, she wasn't just a teammate, she became the enforcer, the protector. And the Clark Army responded in full force. Within 48 hours, Sophie's social media exploded, gaining hundreds of thousands of new followers. Her name was everywhere. She had officially gone from role player to breakout star overnight.
Again, the league's been handed this miracle, this beacon of light, while it was down in some dungeon in the basement on life support, and it was never turned a profit, lost $40 million last year. They get handed this beacon of light, and all these players cannot stand her. They're jealous. The players union, it looks like the whole league
But calling Sophie Cunningham just an enforcer who got lucky would miss the bigger picture entirely. Her rise wasn't a fluke, it was a spotlight finally landing on talent that had been there all along. Long before she joined the Indiana Fever, Sophie was already carving out a media presence of her own. As a charismatic TV analyst for the Phoenix Suns, she showed she wasn't just an athlete, she was a natural communicator. Sharp, articulate, and confident on camera, she had all the makings of a modern sports brand. This moment didn't create her star power, it simply revealed it to the world.
So this is a petition to get Sophie Cunningham removed from the WNBA, where she displayed tonight was disgusting.
Now look, you might think this is just internet noise or a silly little petition.
On the court, Sophie Cunningham brings more than grit, she brings game. A veteran presence with a reliable three-point shot and a no-nonsense playing style, she's exactly the kind of seasoned competitor the young Indiana Fever squad needed. Analysts had already called her the team's most underrated pickup. What they didn't realize was how fast the world would catch on. Sophie isn't just a bodyguard for the league's biggest star, she's a proven baller in her own right. And now, with a powerful story behind her and the spotlight finally on her, she has everything it takes to become a household name.
The anti-Clark fans, I am seeing them not only celebrate Kiari Afen in this situation, but say that Sophie Cunningham was at fault for what happened, and she got what she deserved, and saying good job Kiari Afen.
So how does a single foul turn into millions of dollars? It all begins with the power of the social media engine. That flood of new followers isn't just about popularity, it's prime digital real estate. To brands, those numbers represent more than just attention, they represent direct access to the most loyal, engaged, and free-spending fan base in women's sports today. And when a player like Sophie Cunningham suddenly commands that kind of audience, opportunities come knocking fast. From endorsement deals to media appearances, the spotlight she earned didn't just elevate her status, it unlocked a whole new level of marketability.
We are seeing literal people, not threats of violence, but people encouraging violence against a player. And that's not on. That's not on for nothing. There are people literally out there encouraging violence against Sophie Cunningham. And these are the people that want to say another fan base is the worst fan base in the WNBA, and they're encouraging literal violence against players.
The kind of stuff that's being said to them, the stuff that's being said to Kelsey Mitchell, the kind of things that are being said to Natasha Howard are actually wild. People have taken a photo of these women and circled a bullseye on them and have said, it's on site when I see you. Those are actual threats.
Next come the local endorsements, Indiana businesses from car dealerships to restaurants now eager to associate with the Fever's rising star. But it doesn't stop there. On a national level, brands selling everything from sports drinks to athletic wear will be lining up to work with the player now widely recognized as Caitlin Clark's protector. It's a powerful identity, one that transcends basketball. Tough, loyal, and unshakable, Sophie Cunningham now represents something marketable and meaningful. And behind the scenes, her agent is likely fielding non-stop calls, turning one viral moment into a long-term financial windfall.
Guys, it's actually insane how viral this has already gone. There's so many NBA accounts who are tweeting it. I was getting ESPN notifications about it. Like, it is wild how much traction.
Sophie Cunningham's jersey has sold out. I repeat, the Sophie Cunningham Fever jersey has sold out.
Yes, the Sophie Cunningham Fever jersey is officially sold out, but the real impact goes far beyond sales. Her actions have shaken up the unspoken rules of the WNBA and forced a conversation the league could no longer avoid. The league is in a tricky position. It can't appear to give Caitlin Clark special treatment, but it also can't afford to let its most marketable star take unchecked hits. Sophie Cunningham may have solved that dilemma, without saying a word. By stepping in physically and unapologetically, she introduced a new kind of player accountability. Not league-mandated, but peer-driven. She didn't just defend her teammate, she redefined how stars can be protected, and in doing so, changed the game's unwritten code.
They got beat up by the enforcers, but Sophie Cunningham has responded to the petition by just retweeting a freaking post about her jersey being sold out. That is a response. That is quote tweeting her the petition. Like, that is the best way of going about it.
These days, players thinking about taking a cheap shot have more to consider than just a referee's call. Now, there's the added risk of a strong response from a teammate, one backed by the energy and support of millions watching. One player has set a new standard during the Caitlin Clark era, showing up as a fearless, loyal enforcer. That role has now become a legitimate path to recognition and success. It sparked a new wave of team unity and grit, something no locker room speech could inspire on its own.